All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 13 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast.
That's right.
It
Here we go.
is Sunday about 11:30, so, don't get
Yep.
mad at us if something happens while we're on.
Yeah.
But anyway, looking forward to a lot of stuff this weekend. But the first thing, we hit this last week, and I thought it was pretty good. And I kind of had a little bit of an epiphany this week about the college football playoff rankings. So,
Yeah.
first of all, they release the new rankings every Tuesday. Convenient for everybody in the sports media to talk about.
This is a good time because they released those rankings and now were recording on Sunday. So we got the Saturday games afterward,
Right.
So we kind of,
Yeah, so there wasn't really a whole lot of controversy this week. The only thing was they put Michigan ahead of Michigan State, even
Right.
though Michigan State beat Michigan about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So what was your reaction to that?
I mean, it's one of those it's one of those, like, okay, some of the analysts will get on there and, like, Danny Cannell and some other, and like Joel Klatt will say, well, the games have to matter. Yes, the games do matter, but I mean, yeah, Michigan State went out and lost to Purdue, and Purdue's got I think they got three losses.
Yeah.
Or maybe four. Did they
four,
lose?
Four now because they lost last night.
Four. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's a 4-loss team. So I understand that they just beat them, but it was a game that they had to come back in. So, and Michigan beat Purdue, right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're like right above them. So, I mean, and the thing is with the Big Ten, I don't think people should really complain about that because the Big Ten's going to sort itself out.
Right.
I mean, Michigan State's going to play Ohio State, right? So if Michigan State loses again, goodbye,
Right.
And then Michigan will play Ohio State. So I think it's all going to kind of, you're going to have, whoever's going to beat who, and then it's going to kind of work itself out. And then potentially the Big Ten gets one team in there, like Ohio State or, I don't know, Michigan or Michigan State, like one of those, if someone comes out of the Big Ten, it'll be one of those teams and it'll kind of work itself out. So I get it, but I mean, what we're only supposed to the head to head is the only thing that's supposed to matter. Like, which, I mean, I guess that makes sense because people just want an expanded playoff where we can just decide everything on the field. But, I guess I don't really have as much of a problem with it. I mean, and what I find funny is people say, oh, well, it's arbitrary. Well, yeah, this whole thing is subjective. So, and it's being decided by humans. And now we're hearing people going, well, maybe they should bring computers back into it. Okay. A computer is only as good as the information that you put into it. Okay. Let me give you an analogy because I've been writing about this at my job. You can go online. There are personal injury or like auto loan or car accident claim settlement calculators, right? So say you get seriously injured in a car crash, you're like, how much is my claim worth, right?
Right.
Well, that calculator is only as good as the information you put into it, and you're not going to be able to put in all the information. Okay. So yeah, it's the same thing with the computer ranking of college football. Like you're only going to be able to put in so much and something's going to get left out and people are still going to be pissed off. So, it's a subjective ranking. So I mean, I don't know, but you should probably go into more of
yeah.
your stuff.
So yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, I don't have an issue with the way they did the ranking. I probably would have put Michigan State ahead of them.
Okay.
But I think the committee, what I think the committee is telling you is every head-to-head win or loss is not the same, right?
Yeah.
So,
which I agree. It's true. It's not.
Right. So so Oregon beat Ohio State earlier this year. Now Oregon went to Ohio State, dominated the game for the most part.
They ran the ball all over.
Right. And so Michigan had a 2-touchdown lead on the road in the second half. So I think that's kind of what the committee's telling you. And the thing is, people are arguing about something that there's 13 people. The vote for that was probably 7-6 or 8-5. Like it's not like we're not talking about some gigantic discrepancy where they're just misevaluating. No, what's happening is I'm sure there's coaches on this committee or former coaches. They're watching the tape and saying we think Michigan's better.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's one thing to evaluate it a certain way now, okay? But who's to say if you get to the end of the season? Like I think I look at it like this. I think head to head should be a tiebreaker. You know what I mean? This is the subjective poll right now. We're just going to pick the best teams we can right now.
Okay.
That's all we have, right? So, and I don't understand people get up in arms now. People are going to get up in arms no matter what we do. If we have computers, if we introduce voting, if we have, whatever it is, people are going to get upset. So this kind of leads me. So my larger point is so I had a little bit of an epiphany about this, listening to the media, listening to everybody about this. So I'm listening to Ryan Russillo's podcast, formerly of ESPN, now for The Ringer, and he had Danny Kanell on, and he's asking him, and Danny Kanell puts out his rankings on Twitter, so just to add a little context, until Wake Forest lost, he had Wake Forest ahead of Alabama. And he had Oklahoma number 2, which is vastly different than the AP poll or the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings, And so, he's making the point that, well, being undefeated should matter and blah, blah, blah. So he asks, so he brings it up with him. All right, so how do you do this? How do you, what's your ranking the teams? And it floored me because Danny Kanell goes, well, there's a few different philosophies on how, people do this. Do you do power rankings? Do you rank all the undefeated teams, then put the one-loss teams underneath them? And I just couldn't believe that response. I'm like, what do you mean there's several philosophies on how to do this? Like, you can have whatever philosophy you want on ranking the teams, but there's no discrepancy about these are the best teams. He was like, do I put the best teams I think that will be in the playoff later, or do I put the best teams now? And it occurs to me that, okay, so this is somebody who does this for a living, right? He follows sports for a living. He talks about it for a living, and he doesn't seem to understand it. Like, he's struggling with, all right, well, how should we do this? And so He said what he used to do was he would take the 5 best teams from each conference and rank them 1 through 5, regardless of record. So I'm just going, I'm yelling at my stereo going, what? What are you talking about? So I think there is a misconception out there based on everything I've heard that what I think is happening is people don't like the system and they want to change it, but they want to use the system that we have to try to change it. So I think that's why you're getting everybody just kind of doing whatever they want. And listen, Danny Kanell can rank the teams however he wants. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting he needs to change or whatever. He can rank them however he wants. He's not on the committee.
Right.
But we can't go, well, I think this is the way it should be, and then apply those things to the committee. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was to like for people, if people want to listen to that podcast, you should check it out because I feel like Russillo's kind of on one side and Cannell's on the other, and I thought they did a pretty good job explaining their perspectives, even though with Kanell I tend to disagree. But I thought it was kind of interesting where Kanell, he said, he said that basically like he didn't agree with them ranking the 4 best teams because he said that's just more or less, he's like, that's just too subjective, because it's like, well, one week it could be this and the next week it could be this, I feel like you should just rank the teams like who earned their way in, and but I'm just like, okay, yeah, but that's still subjective too. How do you decide who earned their way? Because like what I thought was funny was, if you haven't watched all these games or you haven't kept up with the scores, and then you actually look at what the scores are. So I remember hearing on the radio a couple of weeks ago, Desmond Howard was on the ESPN morning show, and he was like, yeah, well, Cincinnati, they went on the road to Indiana, they beat Indiana, and they beat Notre Dame, and I'm like, then I looked at their scores, and I'm like, wait, Indiana's not ranked, and Indiana is 2-8. Okay, and so like, oh, they went on the road and beat Indiana's not good,
right?
Now the win against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's ranked number 9. They just won again last night. From what I saw, they were kicking the crap out of Virginia. So if Notre Dame wins out, then that's a really good win. But that's it. That's like all they have to hang their hat on. Okay, because they haven't played anybody else, and even the teams that they played, they haven't blown them out. I mean, they almost lost to freaking Tulsa. So, they blew out, and then they won by 2 scores yesterday Friday night against
South Florida.
But South Florida's 2-7 or 2-8. I mean, they're terrible. So, I guess the point I was trying to make was, I understand if he wants to do it the teams that he feels deserve to be there because of, well, Cincinnati's undefeated or whatever, I mean, I guess, but you would have to change the system. And I also just think that, I don't understand people. It's like, don't you want them to rank the 4 best teams? Don't you want them to not just go, oh, well, this team's undefeated. So, don't you want them to go, well, no, this team actually had some impressive wins. And, because that way I feel like you could have one loss and still get in.
Right.
Don't people want that? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. So I think people, they want to change the system. And listen, I agree the system is flawed and there are better ways to do it. I'm not disagreeing with that. You want to change the system? No problem. But the problem is this is the system that we have. So you have to work within it. Like he said, there's no way to get the 4 best teams. Yeah, but that's what the job is. Like, the committee's job is to pick the 4 best teams. You can not like that. You can argue with that. You can say that that's not the right way to do it. That's fine. But we don't have a choice, right? I disagree with the way.
But philosophically, okay, there's no way to rank the best teams. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, in the abstract, yeah, there probably isn't a way to rank the best teams. There probably isn't a way for me to decide what my favorite Metallica song is above all the others. Like, I mean, there's no way to like take some concept and go, well, this is absolutely the best. And we can, because it's a subjective, it's always going to be a subjective thing. And by the way, even if you just have a tournament and you decide it on the field, that's not necessary. There's other factors that come into play. You can't just totally say that because this team beat this team, that this team is clearly better, so it's always going to be a subjective thing. So I guess I sort of understand where Cannell's coming from. Like, because it's always going to be subjective, just try to take it back to whoever earned their way in and then just let them play on the field and decide it that way. So then there's going to be less controversy because people, for whatever reason, they feel like if you settle it on the field, that's it. Even though I kind of disagree with that.
Well, look, there's 130 teams or whatever. There's no way, there's no possible way to have an objective criteria, okay, to get this right because there's so many teams. Like, you can't have a playoff big enough, right? The constraints of how many games you can play, how often you can play, that gets in the way of, so the committee has to do the best that they can. College football is completely imbalanced, okay? Everybody's schedule is completely different. Every conference is completely different. You have to, so my philosophy is this. You take in all the information and it's a composite of everything. It's not, everyone wants to boil it down to one thing. Well, it's this head-to-head win or this conference championship or, whatever it is. They want to boil it down to one thing, and that's not the way it is. And I think Colin Cowherd made a really good point where he said people don't like to leave Cincinnati out because it's like the presidential election, right? Some people vote for the third party. They know the third party isn't going to win, okay? But they don't like the way the system is, so they're like, I'm going to vote against it. So that's what I've realized that people are doing. Like, they want they want the story, especially the sports media people. They want the story, and they deserve it, and all of this stuff. So I'm going to pick Cincinnati because I don't like the way this is done. So I'm just going to rail against it. Which, okay, I get now. It's like to me, I get it now. I understand what people are doing. They're not comfortable with the way this is. So like, I'm just going to go my own way. And so I disagree with, and everybody you talk to goes, well, it should be like this. That's their starting point. They all go, well, it should be,
So they're not arguing from a perspective of this is the system we have, or are they doing the best that they can within the constraints of the system that we have? They're saying, no, this whole thing's wrong. First of all, so blah blah. Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. That's a fair point. That actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of that fits with what a lot of people say.
And right, and then Joel Klatt, he works for Fox, was on Colin's show this week, and he talked about the playoff, and basically his complaint was that Penn State wasn't ranked, and they should have been in the top 25, and they weren't. And I agree with him. I don't know what's going on there. That seems like a bit of an oversight. And then he's like, well, what would you do? And then Joel Klatt went through. He had they had a prepared thing where he went through his 5 changes that he wanted for college football, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, that's a separate argument. Like, okay, and then he's like, there needs to be more objective criteria. Okay, like what? What objective, other than expanding the playoff, right? What objective criteria can you bring into the system?
Yeah, well, but see, I don't know how the hell you get objective criteria with this stuff. I don't think there's any way to get, like, okay, what are you going to say? Okay, unless you do, like, I mean, okay, for instance, in the NFL, in a division, right? Those aren't really objective criteria either, but they just basically say, like, whoever has the best record wins the division. What if you're tied with somebody else? Well, what's your head-to-head record against them? And then the next tiebreaker is like, I don't know how many points you scored, or I don't remember exactly what it is, or your record within the conference or something like that, or your record within the division or something, But that's not really about deciding who the best team is. That's not trying to make some objective judgment about that. It's just basically like based on your record and these other things. So what, you're going to do it like that? I mean, or what are you going to say? Well, the head-to-head record matters the most. Okay, well, what if you have, okay, so if you have more losses than the other team, then, or what if it's like, what if Michigan State and Michigan finished the season with the same number of losses? They both finished the season with 1 loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're you're going to rank Michigan State above them. Maybe that makes sense, but there may be other times where you go, yeah, but I mean, they played this other team and their quarterback got injured, and then like they had all this weird stuff happen. Somebody blocked a field goal, like, there could be all this weird, and it's like, so you're fine with that? Like, and they probably say, yeah, because it's like, well, it was decided on the field, So yeah, I don't understand. I don't know what objective criteria they're going to pull into. I just don't. What I'm kind of surprised by is I feel like before they even had the BCS, I feel like people would get upset because it was all like head-to-head rank, because they had polls and stuff, and it was all like head-to-head rank, head-to-head record or whatever, and someone just won, so we'll move them up, and somebody just lost, so we'll move them down. I thought that was just arbitrary and ridiculous. I like this system better because the committee's not afraid to go, well, I know this team lost to this team, a week ago, but I think that they're better. I like that. Like, I thought that there were more people who wanted that.
Yeah, so Joel Klatt wanted to bring voting back. He wanted to bring in more data to add to it, whatever, to dilute the committee's choices.
Confusing? Like, what the fuck?
Well, it's like, and this is the thing. That's why we got rid of the AP poll and the coaches poll, because of how biased they were.
Yeah.
Like we got rid of it because of that. So there's no way. So again, it's like everyone's solution is we'll change the system. Well, the committee can't change the system right now. They have to vote on what they have in front of them. So it's like, well, they've lost credibility. It's like, credibility in terms of what? Like, I just,
Yeah, I don't understand. And what's going to happen because they lost credibility? Are teams going to stop playing games? Or are they not going to?
And listen, I have news. Okay, if we go to this 12-team playoff that they're discussing, okay, where 6 teams get an automatic bid if you win your conference, right? You know what's going to happen. First of all, we're going to argue about 13 and 14 should be in instead of should be in. Then we're going to argue so that means there's 6 at-large choices that they have to make.
Yeah, and then people are going to get upset because the SEC will get 2 or 3 teams in.
Exactly. So there is no solution like objective criteria. Like, okay, you can put some more objective criteria, but even though the conference championship thing is complete garbage, the champion of the Pac-12 is not even close to the 3rd best team in the SEC. So again, it's still not objective. So, but anyway, so it actually helped me out a lot to go, okay, these guys are some of them are voting Cincinnati because they don't like the system and they're railing against it. That's why they're doing it. And it's like, okay, now I at least get where people are coming from and why there's such a discrepancy between how some people vote the rankings and some people don't. That's why, when Cannell said that, he just goes, well, there's a few different philosophies on. What do you mean there's a few different philosophies? Like, you vote for the best teams. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just like, it was so confusing. I'm just like, how are you guys really having a hard time with this? Like, rank the best teams. Like, that's it. That's all there is to it. So.
Well, yeah, I got annoyed with him saying that it was, he's like, well, I don't think this best teams thing is good because it's like, well, one week it's this and the other week it's this. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's a subjective ranking. Like, what do you, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if we're not going to, like, there's no real way to be totally objective about it. I mean, I guess the only, in the NFL, we've settled for, well, if they play on the field and then this team wins, okay, they're better, which, okay, fine. I don't always necessarily agree that they're better, but it is a way to just resolve the question. Well, who's better, this team or this team? They play each other and then somebody wins,
Well, and the other thing is, like, we're also applying our own American criteria to it, right? So in America, we have all these playoffs with all these sports, so we decide the champion. Like in European soccer, they don't really have that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no playoffs in the English Premier League. They play all the games, and whoever has the best record wins. Like, we've decided that the way it has to be done is this playoffs that's completely different than the regular season. It
has to be decided on the field.
Right. We've decided that that's the way you do it, and any other way doesn't work. So
that's not, again, I bring this example up all the time. That's not entirely like when the Giants beat the Patriots, who were trying to go undefeated. Okay, the Giants won the Super Bowl. Does that mean that they were the best team in the league that year? The Giants went 9-7. Okay, they trailed in the Super Bowl 7-3, and then they finally scored a touchdown, and the Patriots immediately went down and scored another touchdown. They were barely ahead in that game. Okay. Who was the best team in the league that year? It was the Patriots. Over the course of the entire season, it was the fucking Patriots. Okay. They lost the Super Bowl because of, a couple of plays. Okay. So you're going to tell me, well, that clearly means that the Giants were the better team.
Yeah. If we'd have done power rankings that year, we would not have put the Giants in the playoffs. I'm here to tell you.
Exactly.
If we did the top 4, we wouldn't have put them in. So your argument can't, again, we go back to this that I said last week, your argument can't be, well, on a given day, anybody can beat anybody. Yeah, that's true. That's always true. That's always going to be true. That has nothing to do with, so it's not perfect. We might not get it exactly right every time. This is all we have.
Yeah. What I don't understand, I just thought, I felt like more people would be into this because it's like, okay, we can be a little more free to kind of say, well, it's not just the record. It's not just the head-to-head thing. We're going to watch all these teams and then say, who do we think are the best ones based on how they've been playing the entire year? Yep. I just thought more people, but no, they're not. They just want, most of these people are not going to be happy until they get a 16-team playoff. And then once they get a 16-team playoff, everybody will shut the hell up. Like there'll be a little bit of gripe. There'll be a little bit of griping about teams 17 and 18 that didn't get in, but it won't be anywhere near as bad as, people griping about team 5 or 6 that didn't get into the 14 playoff, and look, all these people whining, they're going to eventually expand the playoff. Okay. I don't know if it'll be 8 teams or 10 teams or 12 teams or whatever. It's going to expand and it's going to kind of dilute the regular season and you guys will have exactly what you want. So,
Listen, I don't think it's going to change. I think this sport, college football, is built on controversy. It's built on arguing with each other. This is what they want. So I don't. Nothing's changed in my entire lifetime of watching this sport. This is what happens. It's never changed. So yes, I think a bigger playoff will help, but I don't think any of this stuff gets eliminated. I think it will still be, whatever it is. And listen, everybody who has a brain, nobody who's thinking clearly thinks Cincinnati is one of the best 4 teams. They're just not. Nobody thinks on a weekly basis Cincinnati would beat all of these Power 5 teams. They wouldn't, and when they get, and listen, and, everybody's upset. Listen, I'm here to tell you, whoever gets 4th in the playoff is going to get killed anyway. So
yeah, well,
we don't need to worry about it.
One other point I wanted to make sure to make, and Russillo was kind of making this point. Okay, look, if you're Cincinnati, okay, you don't get the benefit of the doubt, okay, because you've never been in the playoff before. You're in a lesser conference, okay. So when people say, "Well, it's unfair," it's like, okay, you guys are not really playing anybody. Okay, now you beat Notre Dame. Good, Notre Dame's a ranked team. That's a good win. But you have to blow these other teams out. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. You haven't been there before. Okay, so when people are like, "Oh, well, what if this team wins the ACC and only has 2 losses?" And people are like, "You're not going to let them in because they don't have a Clemson uniform on." It's like, yeah, well, Clemson's been in the playoff like every single freaking year and they won 2 championships. Like, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt because there's a history there. Okay. So yeah, when people are complaining, "Oh, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair," it's like, you still got to go out there and you got to win some games. You got to give us something to cling to say that you're a really good team. Cincinnati really hasn't done that. Okay. So, and they're still ranked 5. They could still get in. They still have a shot to get in.
Right.
So, but it's the guys, you got to do something that, like, people are like, "Oh, well, I don't think Alabama has been as impressive." Yeah, but like, look at who they've played. They played Texas. They lost to Texas A&M, but they beat LSU. They beat these other SEC teams. Like, okay, that's something you can cling on to. Georgia, they're undefeated, and they've played an SEC schedule. It's like, okay, Oregon, they beat Ohio State on the road. So it's like you got to give.
Well, they're saying
something. Go ahead.
Right, they're saying it's not fair to Cincinnati, but it's also not fair to Michigan and Michigan State. And all of these teams that play in Power 5 conferences it's not fair that Penn State's going to have 5 losses probably because they play all these really difficult teams. So the idea that it's not fair, give me a break. Like, you're getting a sweet ride, Cincinnati. You're getting a complete unfair advantage. You get one.
Like I said, like, you can't, on some level, I can understand complaining about some things, but on another level, it's like, you do have a responsibility to actually go out there and prove yourself.
Right.
Okay. Regardless of what conference you're in, you have to go out there and prove yourself. If you don't go out there and prove yourself, then I don't have a lot of sympathy for you, because you can complain, "Well, we went undefeated and we didn't get in." It's like, yeah, you didn't beat anybody, and the teams you played sucked, and you couldn't even blow them out. So, like, people need to kind of calm down when they complain about we're getting screwed. A lot of times it's bullshit. It's like, we're getting screwed. It's like, yeah, but you didn't do this and this and this and this. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you.
Well, and I think we'll finish up on this with this topic. Cincinnati, a domino fell this week. Oklahoma lost. So
yeah,
you're getting mighty close. And next weekend will be the reckoning week, because Oregon has to play Utah and Ohio State plays Michigan State. So
yeah,
so we'll see.
It's going to sort itself out. There's probably only going to be one team left standing. So since, for the people complaining that it's unfair, Cincinnati has a realistic shot to get in there. Okay, so you really need to shut up.
Yeah,
and Cincinnati, you won by like 15 or 16 points against South. Your next couple games, you need to blow those teams out. You need to give the committee something to like, okay, you know, like you can't just say, well, you can't just rely on the committee to bail you out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cincinnati may end up being a victim anyway. I think SMU or Houston is going to beat them.
I think so too.
But anyway, I'm not a hater. All right, so let's go on to the NFL.
We're going to do our weekly Tua bitch session, or we're going to whine and complain about the Dolphins.
We'll try to keep it to a minimum, but it just shows how it just shows how disappointed and sad we are about our football team. But bright spot, the Dolphins did win on Thursday night somehow, some way. What are your thoughts about the win against the Ravens?
Well, what's funny is that, like, for the people who are the Tua defenders, you know, I can sort of understand it, but it's basically like when you go back and look through the games that Tua has won, there's really a similarity between most of them, right? Like, for instance, right. I was watching I was watching clips. I was watching highlights of the Cardinals-Dolphins game from last season, where the Dolphins won 34-31.
Right.
Now, the offense didn't score 34 points. The offense scored 27 points because the defense picked up a fumble and ran it back for a touchdown.
Right.
Okay. To be fair, Tua was really good in that game. I mean, he made some throws in that game. I'm like, I don't feel like I've seen that this year. Like, I don't, you know, there were some throws in that game where I was like, all right, can you do more of that? Like, if you do more of that, you could be pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, and like the game against the Ravens, they had a fumble recovery back for a touchdown, you know. And you look at the score of the game, it was 22-10, like some, you know, they win a game, they get a defense, you got to get some turnovers on defense or a defensive touchdown. You have a weird score, you kick a couple field goals, you know, you have some wacky kind of plays, like that play where he threw the ball to the offensive lineman and he almost scored the touch, that was a really amazing play. I got to give it up for that guy.
Yep. Shout out to Robert Hunt.
Yeah. So, like there's when you go back through most of the games that Tua has won, a lot of them look like that. You know, there's a few games here and there where he scores a bunch of points, but
right.
Yeah, it's really they kind of look like that. So it kind of just makes you go, yeah, I don't really see what we're getting. You know, I did find like we were listening to Albert Breer on Colin Cowherd, and he was saying how he doesn't think that Flores and Chris Greer are going to pin their future on Tua. And that might be true. I mean, look, if they can go get Deshaun Watson, they're going to go get Deshaun Watson. But I don't know who else they're going to get, you know, in terms of a free agent quarterback. Like, are you going to go get Nick Foles or something? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'd go with Nick Foles. I don't know. That's an interesting, or Teddy Bridgewater or something. I don't know.
You're such a hater. Yeah. Look. It's not a good position to be in. You know, like I was texting you, the Dolphins can either keep Tua and move on with this roster that's not very talented, but they'll have some draft picks and they'll have some cap space. If they trade for Deshaun Watson, then they will have no picks and no cap space and not a very good roster with a really good quarterback.
Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like, I understand Deshaun Watson's really good, but it's like, guys, the roster is just not very good. The offensive line's not good. I mean, they just have so many needs. I don't know why you'd want to give up more picks when you need offensive linemen, you need pass rushers, you need. I mean, maybe you don't necessarily need running backs because the offensive line is so bad. Like, if you fix the offensive line, the running game will kind of fix itself a little bit. But like, look, last night I was watching some YouTube clips of Tua. I was watching some YouTube channels of people breaking down, like I was telling you before we started the podcast, JT O'Sullivan, former NFL quarterback, who should be the owner of a sports bar, because JT O'Sullivan's, I mean, that is a sports bar name.
It's in South Boston.
Yeah, I mean, dude. I mean, that's just
It writes itself.
that happen. I mean, it just happens. It just happens on its own.
Hey, Paul, you been to JT's?
Yeah, or just O'Sullivan's.
That's right, or O'Sullivan's. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
But um, but yeah, I mean, I can understand where people would defend Tua a little bit because I was watching some clips of him. I've seen different things where it's like, okay, if you're going to play in a rhythm kind of timing offense where it's like you snap the ball, you make a read or two, you throw the ball, okay, because that's kind of how he has to play because he doesn't have a good arm. He doesn't have a big arm. He can't really throw the ball really hard. So, yeah, like I can kind of understand that, and I can see different things. Like I saw stuff in the Falcons game, I saw stuff in the Jaguars game, I saw stuff like I was watching stuff from last year. There are throws he made against the Chiefs, there are throws he made against the Cardinals. You know, where it's like, okay, like if you can do that kind of stuff, like I guess I can sort of see it. But what people don't understand is, and I'm going to get kind of, I guess, in the weeds on this, like if you're not going to be really big and you don't have a big arm and you don't have like really tremendous athletic ability, then the other stuff has to be like pinpoint, like you got to be on with all the other stuff. And the problem that I see with him is like pre-snap. I mean, dude, you're not going to be able to get away from people. So you need to, pre-snap, you need to identify what's going on. And if you're being blitzed, you're not going to get away from it. Who's your hot route? Where are you going to throw the ball? Like there was a play against Jackson. No, it was against Atlanta. And it was basically, he had no backs in the backfield. So it was like four wide receivers. Okay. And he had, the defense it was like 5-on-5 on the line, right? Because they had a tight end in blocking.
Right.
And then there was another defender who was kind of by a receiver, but you could tell he was probably going to come blitz. So that it would have been 6-on-5. So that would have been a free rusher. Okay. Now the play ends up basically Tua snaps the ball. He drops back. There was a receiver to his right and the cornerback was like off him a little bit. And the receiver just ran up and stopped and turned within like half a second. Okay. So at that point, it's like throw him the ball. Now the play ends up Tua gets sacked. That's not on the offensive line. That's on you. That's pre-snap. You have to know how to deal with that stuff. You got to know the protections. That's why I'm kind of like, when people talk about Mac Jones, yeah, he's limited, but from what I've heard, pre-snap, he's really good, which he better be because he doesn't have the talent to make up for it.
Right.
So and then that's the thing, like I've seen stuff from Tua where it's like he's really accurate. I've seen other stuff where he recognizes stuff and he makes a bad throw and it ends up being intercepted, and then there's plays where you see and it's like, okay, I don't know if that's a good play or not, because it's like he threw the ball, the guy caught it, it was a touchdown or it was a big play. And I'm like, should he have thrown it? Did he decide to throw there before the snap and just throw it anyway? And then it worked out? Like, because sometimes that happens. So, yeah, again, I can see where some of the people are coming from when they're positive about Tua, but at the same time, there's got to be, and I don't know if that's him. I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if that's game preparation. I mean, we've criticized the coaching staff. I don't know. So as far as them wanting to move forward with him, I guess I could see how they could talk themselves into it. I mean, they talked themselves into drafting him and they talked themselves into drafting a wide receiver.
I just don't, I don't think there's a better option. Like, I don't think, you might at this point, you might as well just stick with the quarterback who knows the system, who's already got a rapport with the coaches, unless you're going to change coaches. I don't have an issue with it. I thought that, like we talked about, I mean, I think, the Dolphins defense showed up, but how much of that was just, they were just blitzing the whole time and the Ravens have no
pass rushers. They can't rush the quarterback.
Right. So the Ravens can't really, they have all their running backs are hurt. So what the Ravens are basically going to do. So it's kind of like, they won the game, but it's not a game that I feel good about. They scored one offensive touchdown. If they don't get that defensive touchdown, I don't know that they win the game. So it's one of those.
If they don't get the defensive touchdown, it's a different looking game.
Right.
That's the thing that people need to account for when your defense scores a touchdown. If you didn't get that, like how would the rest of the game have looked? Like would you have been able to make that up on your own on your offense? I don't know. Like I do think that there's probably a lot of times in life the answer is somewhere in the middle. So Colin Cowherd has been consistently Flores is a good coach. It's just he doesn't have a quarterback, and we're going. Well, no, that I don't know that he's a good coach, and their roster stinks. There's probably somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle, maybe closer to one side or the other. That maybe the answer is on because we're not in the locker room. We don't. Really know.
So I get myself worked up about this, and it drives me nuts. But then I heard Trent Dilfer on the Rich Eisen show, and talk about making me feel worse. So he said basically, he watched the whole Thursday night game, and he said that. Tua was okay. He did some good things, but he said, the Dolphins just aren't great right now. He's like they just don't have. He's like they don't have a whole lot of offensive. They've got Jalen Waddle and a bunch of tight ends. And he's like they just.
Actually, look, I think Jalen Waddle's pretty good. I think if Tua had more time to throw, I think maybe he'd be a little better. But some of the stuff I was watching yesterday. Like he seems to be a pretty good route runner. Like he's paying attention to details on routes where it's like, okay, you run down here, you turn your head, and then you run out. So you get the cornerback off you and you get separation, like stuff like that. That's important. Like if a receiver does that, they're not just some lazy route runner. They're not just running out there, here, throw me the ball, So, yeah, I mean, I probably would have liked it better if they had drafted an offensive lineman, but,
Yeah, so he's basically saying, that they're like Tua's doing what the coaches are asking him to do. But he's like, they're just not explosive. He's like, and they're not going to be explosive this year, and they probably won't be explosive next year. And if you give them, he's like, but you give them enough time to get a bunch, enough playmakers around him, then they could have something. He really liked Charlie Fry being the play caller, and then he said something that I disagree with, and I think I have evidence that I'm right. So he said, Tua pushed the ball down the field as much as he could with having a broken finger. And so my reaction to that is, oh, so it's the broken finger? That's the problem? Like, there's no evidence. Like, it's been said by people who know what they're talking about. He doesn't have a very strong arm. So how and my complaint, and
there were throws. I mean, again, I was watching a bunch of clips yesterday. Like some of the throws that are, when I say downfield, I mean 10, 15 yards, something like that. On some of those throws, you're watching them and it's like, that's taken a while to get there. Like you're literally watching it going, okay, are you a college quarterback or an NFL quarterback? Because that's taken a while to get, which again is why I'm saying Tua needs to be perfect on the other stuff. Like he needs to anticipate stuff and get the ball out quicker because it's not going that fast.
Yeah. So yeah, I know, I've been confused by Trent Dilfer the whole time. He's been the biggest proponent of Tua. And I just think, honestly, I think he knows football. I'm not questioning his football knowledge. He knows what he's talking about, which is why it's so confusing. I just think he just missed on this. I think he just missed on, Tua being he said he was a generational talent. I think he just got this one wrong. It doesn't mean Tua can't play quarterback. It doesn't mean he's not good enough to play in the NFL. He is. It's just.
I think, like I said, there's stuff I see where I'm like, okay, if you can be consistent with that, if you were on a better team that had a better offensive line and some more playmakers, I can see how you could be a productive quarterback for several years and win, a good number of your games. But so I can sort of defend Trent Dilfer on that. And I guess, he's actually worked with Tua. He knows him. So he knows the person. So I guess I can sort of see how you could say, well, I think that he gets different stuff. And like, you can watch certain things and I'm like, I do think he gets some stuff, and like when he talks about the play calling, yeah, they're, that I've seen, if you really, really watch some of the plays that they run, yeah, there's some kind of creative stuff on it. There were some touchdowns in the Falcons game where it was like, that's a nice play design, that Charlie Fry made, which I think you need to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, just in today's NFL, you got to do that regardless of who your quarterback is, but especially with Tua, like, I think you need to do some stuff to kind of make things a little easier for him. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he just missed. I mean, I think he probably, like I said, he knows Tua, so I think he just, the guy, you watch him, you see him study and stuff, and it's like, the other thing I was thinking was, here's a good way to think about it. I told you I was watching that YouTube channel with JT O'Sullivan, right? That guy's like an encyclopedia of offensive and of NFL football, like offense knowledge, right? I mean, the stuff he's saying, all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, he knows all this stuff. And no offense to the dude, he actually played in the NFL, which you got to be pretty damn good to play in the NFL. But I mean, it's not like he was a franchise quarterback,
right,
or a consistent starter, for years and years. So he knows all that, and he was a backup for a little bit.
Right.
Like, that's how hard it is to play quarterback in the NFL. Like, you're even the guy, he's an encyclopedia of football knowledge, but can you go out there and do it?
Yeah. So then, and I've listened to a bunch of different people that say, well, Tua doesn't have a very strong arm. And then I read something by Ben Solak, who writes for The Ringer, and he basically was talking about the Dolphins. The question was like, are they all in on Tua or something like that? And he goes through, what he thinks about it. And then at one point he says, Tua has a lack of arm strength and it's getting worse. And it's just like, so I'm confused. So I'm just, again, as we talk, every time we talk about this, I get more confused. I don't understand. Where's if you've been telling me he's special, but I can't see it. And all these other people are telling me he's not, there's nothing like spectacular about him. And I was watching, I went back and I was just, I think as a Dolphins fan, I think we get into a bad place. And so I was looking on YouTube and watching some clips of before the NFL draft in 2020, before Tua was drafted. And they were debating, whether to take him on one of the shows. I think it was Get Up on ESPN. And basically Mike Tannenbaum was a former GM, and he was like, look, this is too much of a risk. Like, you can't fully evaluate the injury. So he's like, there are times to take a risk and there are times when you shouldn't. This is not something I would mess around with. Justin Herbert can win you a lot of games, but this is going to be a problem, and basically, they went to Dan Orlovsky, the former quarterback, and he was like, no, this is exactly the guy you take the risk on. He does special things as a quarterback. And then, Mike Tannenbaum said he doesn't think the gap between Justin Herbert and Tua was very big. And so then they went back to Orlovsky and he said, no, the gap is really big. Tua is way better than Justin Herbert is. It's not even a question. He looks off this guy. He reads this. He had all these quarterback traits that, whatever. And that Clark's reaction is very perfect. That was my reaction. So I said, now listen, I'm not punishing him for not knowing better too much because this is before the draft. But there are some things that are not disputable, right? So then he puts up Orlovsky. They put up highlights. This was the best part. So they put up some highlights of Tua's. This was before after the first season was over. So Tua had already played in the NFL at this point. And Orlovsky's still saying, Tua's going to be great. Just wait. And so they put up, they played the Kansas City Chiefs last season.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so they show two deep balls he throws where I think one got picked off or one was, whatever.
Well, one that was tipped, and it was actually right. Was the game out of hand at that point because he started throwing the field because the game was out of hand.
Right, okay. Right. So he throws a deep ball and he shows, he didn't quite get it, exactly where it needs to, the trajectory needs to, and he shows on the graphic, the trajectory needs to be here. And, this is where the ball should be thrown, whatever. And I'm going, okay, so he's got to lay it out there farther. And then he goes, and I know he can do it because let me pull up an Alabama highlight. So he pulls up the Alabama highlight. He throws it deep. The receiver is 5 steps past, like, he's 5 yards by the defender. Like, a high school kid could have made that throw. Like,
Yeah.
when you're that wide, it's like being wide open in the backyard. Anybody could make that throw. Like, there's nothing special about, whatever. And it's like, yeah, he can't get it to that point because his arm can't do that.
Yeah.
The only way he can throw the deep ball is to be like Russell Wilson. He's got to throw a pop fly that lands exactly where it's supposed to. And that takes a long time to figure out. I'm not saying he can't do that. And I don't think throwing the ball deep is his biggest problem. His biggest problem is going to be throwing the ball 15 to 20 yards down the field and driving it into small windows.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I haven't really seen him do, yeah.
Right. So you're telling me, all he's going to do is this. It's like, yeah, but he doesn't have the arm strength for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, I'm not saying that he has to be some quarterback who chucks the ball way down the field all the time. Justin Herbert doesn't even do that. He could because he's got the arm strength, but he doesn't even do that. You don't necessarily need to do that to be productive in the NFL, but you have to, you got to get some chunks of yards. Like, if you can get every now and then get a 15, 20-yard completion, maybe you get a 10-yard completion and the receiver breaks a tackle and then it turns into a 25-yard completion. Like, you have to be able to get some of those. And in order to do some of that, you got to drop back, you got to fire the ball into some tight places and throw the guy open. He can't already be open. You got to throw it to where he's going to be.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, basically in conclusion with the Dolphins, it's very sad. Basically, we're not going to be.
They had a bunch of draft picks, and they and also they made some trades that were, looking back, were ill-advised because they traded stuff for draft picks and they didn't get back anywhere near the same value that they traded away. So yeah, they kind of crapped the bed. Really, I mean, they really did.
And so so basically, I mean, what it sounded like without saying it. Trent Dilfer, it sounded like what he was saying was, well, they'll have to, once they have all of this great stuff around him, then he'll be good. And it's like, okay, so we're not, so basically, I can just see it on the horizon, right? Let's say the Dolphins win some more games because their schedule is pretty favorable the rest of the way. Let's say they win some more games here. They end up, it's not horrible. They keep the coach and the GM. Well, next year we're not going to score any points anyway. And next year they're going to have to make the playoffs for the coach and the GM to keep their job. They probably won't make the playoffs. So then they're going to fire everybody, right? We're going to get a new coach, and then Tua is going to have to deal with a whole new offense he's got to learn, so he's going to suffer because of it. So it's really it's incredibly disappointing. Or like I said, the other option is we're going to have Deshaun Watson on a team that's 4-12. I mean, it's just yeah, we'll have a quarterback. It's great, but we won't have any cap space, so we can't really do anything. We're going to be depending on all these draft picks that we made that we've missed on a million of them. So anyway, I hate to put all of that into after a Dolphins win.
I do think what's funny is I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to talk themselves into Tua next year because their next few games they play the Jets and the Panthers and and I don't care that the Panthers have Cam Newton. Have you watched Cam Newton in the last couple of years? Like, come on, the Panthers are not that good. So the Dolphins could end up winning the next 3 games, and Tua could, even if they don't win the next 3, Tua could look good in these games. Like I said, there's been times he's looked good. So,
Well, it speaks to me about how it just speaks to me about how bad the situation is when they put Jacoby Brissett in, he gets hurt, so they have to put in the quarterback that's already hurt to play. So now they have both their quarterbacks hurt. If that doesn't speak to how pathetic the offensive line and the coaching has been I don't even know what to say. Like when you're just repeatedly getting your quarterbacks hurt, I'm having I have a hard time with, well, Flores was a good coach. Really?
Yeah, because people will talk about the defense, and I'm like, yeah, and I thought it was hilarious earlier this season when I looked it up. Yeah, they got a bunch of turnovers last year on defense. Okay, that makes your defense look way better than it really is. Their defense is not that good, and them having to blitz all the time. They don't have pass rushers, so Anyway.
All right. So, what other couple other NFL stories? Do you care about Odell Beckham to the Rams or?
Well, I guess it's important now that Robert Woods tore his ACL. I mean,
Yeah, that kind of worked out.
That yeah. So that's pretty much the only injury they can manage, I think, at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, again, this is another thing I was hearing Trent Dilfer talk about this. He's like, he doesn't think Beckham's going to get he's not going to get a volume of targets. He's not going to get the ball because they have so many guys they get the ball to. So
yeah.
he's like, I do think, but he did say he will get the ball down the field more and he will get more chances to do stuff. But it's not going to be this. So, I think, I think I think it's great for them to try to make a Super Bowl run. I don't know. I don't think this is a long-term solution by any means. I don't think he's going to stay there. And if he wants to get paid, they don't have any money to pay him. So,
yeah.
The other thing was Justin Fields on Monday night for the Bears.
That's right.
He's probably the guy that I'm most jealous of. I mean, I'm most jealous of not having Joe Burrow, I'll be honest. But this is probably my... What?
More than Justin Herbert?
I don't know.
It's kind of...
Yeah, it's kind of either or. I don't know.
It's just kind of like,
It's a personal... It's not just a quarterback play thing. I think it's a personal thing. I think I just like Joe Burrow better. Just because I feel like all the shit he went through in college, having to transfer, and then like he's a badass, man. He's just like...
Okay. All right. I can understand that.
He just he's just like, come on with me. I'll bring you guys all. I just feel like he's a player, man. I'm sorry, not a player, a playa. But Justin Fields also a playa.
When I watched the highlights of that, I'm like, I literally wanted to like scream at the Dolphins front office. That's what an NFL quarterback looks like. It's like, okay. He's obviously more athletic. Because I'm a Dolphins fan, I just, I refer a lot of stuff back to Dan Marino. But like, there's, sometimes I watch certain quarterbacks throw the ball, and it's just like, okay, that's how you throw a damn football. Okay. Now, granted, Justin Fields is more mobile than Marino ever was, and he could throw on the move. He can throw on the move like crazy. But yeah, you watch that and you go, okay. That's talent. There's a lot of potential there. The Bears need to get their offensive line right and get some other stuff fixed. He could be pretty good. He's got a lot of potential. Right,
but that's the point. Like the Bears don't have a great offense. They don't have a lot going for them, and he led them down the field at the end of the game to win the game. And he's making play again. Now, does he have some issues? Yes. He has issues. Like he's got to do a better job of reading the stuff better. He's got to do a better job of getting the ball out quicker when it's necessary. He holds on to it a little bit. He's got issues that need to be worked on. But he throws a fantastic ball down the field. He's an unbelievable athlete. Like he can do all of this, all these things, and somebody's just got to bring him along and get him better. But I got to keep it. I'll keep it to the Bears. Forget the Dolphins for a minute. Yeah, I really. But I thought he played well. And it's Pittsburgh Steelers defense. It's not some chump defense either. Yeah. This is not
Mike Tomlin always say what you want about the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. He always has that defense ready to roll.
Yeah,
he's a defensive coach. He knows that he gets them ready to go.
So. And needless to say, like, and by the way, I liked it and was like, oh wow, this is great. And then Colin Cowherd went, the Bears have a quarterback. It's all set. I was like, whoa. whoa. Like, listen, I like this kid. I think he's going to, my personal opinion is, I think everybody that passed on him is going to regret it.
But the Carolina Panthers, what the fuck were you doing?
Philadelphia.
The Denver Broncos, what the hell? What are you doing?
Yeah. And the Denver Broncos are literally a quarterback away. That team is ready to roll. They have everything. They have both lines.
Just a side note, what is it with some of these teams that are like, oh, no, we're fine. We can win with this. Is it hubris? Are you stupid? Like, what I don't understand. It's like, it's 2021. It's not 1985. Like, what Like, oh yeah, we can win. No, you can't. When was the last time you saw some run-of-the-mill quarterback win the Super Bowl? I mean, what Nick Foles? Yeah, but I mean, did you watch how Nick Foles played in that playoff run? Like he looked like a real freaking quarterback.
Well, and by the way, the Eagles didn't believe in Nick Foles because they drafted Carson Wentz. So what are you talking about? Yeah, Denver and Washington to me, like, yeah, this is something we should probably do or maybe more this season or in the offseason is Washington and Denver. What were you thinking? We're going to get Teddy Bridgewater and Ryan Fitzpatrick and they're going to take us to the promised land? What are you talking about? Like, I'm just blown away. How did Justin Fields get to the 11th pick? That is just, the Bears got to steal.
This is one of those questions, and I'm just going to be rolling around in my head for years. Like some of the decisions that some of these teams seem to make they don't make sense. Like I would love to know what went into it, or maybe I'm reading too much into it when I say what went into it. Some of these decisions, I think sometimes maybe not enough goes into it. Maybe they're just kind of like, no, we'll do this. They just kind of like, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Denver was thinking. They knew Drew Lock was not the guy, but evidenced by the fact that they traded for Teddy Bridgewater. So they knew that, okay, well, whatever. And it's like, why didn't you just like and here's the thing that I was thinking about this last night. So you brought up Dan Marino, right? To me, the closest, like, the way they throw the ball, like Zach Wilson for the Jets, like when you watch his highlights, he's got that Dan Marino thing where it comes out real quick and it's a freaking rope. Like he's the one guy and it's easy. Like it's not like this setup with whatever. It's just bam, balls out, and it's just wow. He can do that. No, I don't know that. But that being said, he's not ready. He wasn't ready to play. Like they should have. Like, and San Francisco's learning this too. Like, they drafted Trey Lance, great, but he's not ready right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very specific. There's a specific thing you can do, and Justin Fields, he's not ready mentally to play right now, but he just can do stuff.
There's so much that goes into it. He needs more time.
Right, but he's good enough with his skill set to get by. He can survive like this. But yeah, a lot of these guys, and I agree with Trent Dilfer on this, like most of these guys should sit. They really should. Yeah, I realize.
Like, I'll agree with Trent Dilfer on this. Like, I think he would probably say that a lot of these teams don't know what the hell they're doing with their quarterback, so they don't know how to bring them along properly. I think that's probably true. Some of these guys, they really, and people would argue, oh, well, no, you don't draft them to sit. It's like, dude, there's so much that they have to get up to speed on. Like, just in terms of like we were talking earlier about the pre-snap stuff, and like all that stuff is there's no like, well, the secret to playing quarterback is this. No, there's tons of secrets to it. There's tons of little things that you got to get right. So yeah, like a lot of these guys probably need to sit. They need to sit for a while. They need to learn how to watch film. They need to learn how to prepare. They need to learn, the playbook. They need to learn how to, like, looking at different coverages and stuff. Like, yeah, a lot of these guys need to sit for a while and like learn more stuff. And teams probably do a really piss poor job of like getting quarterbacks ready to play.
And I think, I also think the last two seasons with the NFL draft were out of this world for quarterbacks. Like there were 9 quarterbacks in last year's draft. There were 5 in the first round, and except for Trey Lance, all of them are playing. So I think what I want to point out is this year, like this upcoming draft, it's nothing like that. None of these guys coming out in this draft are ready to start right away. They're just not. So it's gonna be real fascinating to me next year when people are like, "Oh, rookie quarterback, yeah, it's not the case." But anyway, we got off on our own tangent there. So
there's one more NFL thing that I wanted to do, because I was listening to or I was watching First Things First, and Nick Wright, who's obviously a Chiefs homer, which is fine. Hey, we're Dolphins. Well, I mean, I guess it's fine, but I feel like you need to be at least rational when you're discussing the team that you root for.
We're in the Miami Dolphins support group.
Yes, exactly. All right. but he was talking about the Chiefs, and he was saying that the game against the Packers, which they won like 14-7 or 13-7,
13-7,
like yeah, they didn't really, and the Chiefs offense really didn't look good. Mahomes didn't really look good. And then Nick Wright's like, well, but there was one play toward the end of the game where I'm like, okay, everything's going to be fine because he made that one play. Okay, dude, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. That entire idea that, well, that one moment things flipped and then everything was fine. That's not how life works, pal. Okay, that's not. You don't just get one moment right. And the analogy to this is the analogy that I'll draw is in the movie Back to the Future, the science fiction classic, one of the best time travel movies of all time. Marty McFly goes back in time and changes the past. Okay, and basically based on one event, his dad punching Biff in the face, and getting his then like dating his mom and then marrying him and having kids and all this stuff, based on that one event, the rest of his entire life changed. Now, that's possible, but you also have to understand that, like, just because you did something different one time, what you're going to know how to do that all these other times that problems come up later in your life. So it's like, yeah, so Patrick Mahomes made one good throw. Okay, like, but dude, there's going to be a bunch of other kinds of situations that you're going to have to deal with along the way, like, how the hell do you know, like, that you're going to just magically, because you did this one thing right, well, now I know the answer to everything, and I'm just going to fix everything from here on out. Like, I just think that's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback of my team, I'd have ultimate faith in him.
Yeah. I do too, because, I mean, he's won an MVP, he's won a Super Bowl, but there are some things where it's like, dude, you got to stop turning the ball over, and you got to stop trying to make hit a home run on every single play. You can't just sit back there and wait. Like, you got to eventually, at certain times, you just got to, take what the defense is giving you and move the ball. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I certainly am not pointing to one play. The Chiefs have issues. They need to try to. They have 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or whatever's left to try to work them out. But it is disturbing watching them. It is really.
Yeah, well, what I thought was funny was that Nick Wright goes, well, the Cowboys losing to the Broncos was really bad because look at what their schedule's coming up. They got this team and they got this team, and then they got the suddenly 5-4 Chiefs. So Chiefs are 5. What the so? Have you been watching the Chiefs? Oh, they're 5-4. Yeah, they're 5-4 for a fucking reason. Like, what the?
That thing I texted you where I said it shouldn't be that hard for an NFL team to be average.
Yeah.
What did you? Because so this is my argument. This is what makes me really mad. Okay, is that it's not that hard in the NFL to just be in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
So
to be like 500, or like to finish the season 6-10, or 6-11, 7-10, 8-9, like right around that 9-8, right around that middle area, because the talent level usually between most of the teams isn't like there's not some huge gap. It's usually it's kind of around the same.
You're gonna have you're gonna every year, right? Every year you have 3 or 4 teams that are at the bottom, right? You have the 4, 5, 6 teams at the top, and then everything else is kind of smushed in the middle. And it's like, so this is, it's back to, what really bothers me is, telling me, well, it's a good coach and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and I don't care. And by the way, I don't want people to misunderstand. I don't care about winning games. Like, I'm not talking about the Dolphins losing games. That doesn't bother me. Okay. It bothers me when you lose to Jacksonville. That bothers me. It also bothers me when you lose 35-0 at home to Buffalo. Like, Buffalo's a better team. They're a Super Bowl contender. I get it. You shouldn't be losing.
Quarterback. That's fine. But I mean, 35-0, like really at home,
right? And the way that they've played. I mean, remember against Atlanta, were they losing against Atlanta and had to come back and then they lost? I can't remember.
They were down like 27-14.
Okay. That's what
at first it was like a nip and tuck game, and then they got down because Tua threw a couple interceptions. They got down 27-14, and he brought them back. They got up 28-27, and then Atlanta drove down and kicked a field goal and won the game.
Right.
Which, by the way, you talk about teams being right around the middle. Remember, the Dolphins, they had a close game against the Jaguars and a close game against the Falcons. If they won those 2 games, they'd be 5-5.
Right.
So what's hilarious is, even as bad as the Dolphins have been, they're within a couple of plays of being a 500 team.
Right. And the Raiders game, where they basically, when they throw the screen pass in the end zone, like, I don't even know. It just blows my mind. Like, a team for a coaching staff that's been there this is their 3rd year there, they shouldn't be making these mistakes. I'm not saying they should be winning games and contending for the Super Bowl. Not what I'm saying. Not at all. This is not even a playoff team. I'm just saying they should be more competitive than this.
Yeah.
For God's sakes, the Vikings look at the Bears. The Bears don't have any more talent than the Dolphins do. And they're 3-5? I mean,
yeah,
3-6, whatever it is. Like, so anyway, we'll yell about our terrible football team later. So with the NBA, I was kind of interested in this. I was watching some stuff, and we had the Miami Heat played the Denver Nuggets, and we had that little scuffle between Marcus Morris and Nikola Jokic. And then
I thought it was that's one of those things that happens where it's like, it happens and you're like, yeah, the guy on the team that I root for was wrong, but the team that you root for is going to come out and defend the guy. Oh, well, he was just, supposed to like, oh, it was just a take foul. Yeah, it's like, oh, right. That's what you do on a take foul. You shove your shoulder into the guy's chest. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple issues. I mean, so Morris is in the wrong for doing it, and then he just walks away like it's no big deal. So Jokic gets pissed off and just elbows him in the back and knocks him down. And I've heard this. I've heard this from somebody, but I find it really interesting. Jokic, I really find fascinating because I think of Jokic as he's like the fat kid in elementary school that if you pissed him off, he would beat the crap out of you because he was just bigger than everybody else. Yeah. And I feel like and plus they mentioned this on Inside the NBA. Kenny Smith actually compared it to Blake Griffin. When Blake Griffin was in the league, they didn't like Blake Griffin jumping over people and dunking on everybody. So they used to just hard foul him, just, take an extra shot at him just because they could. And I think the same thing is happening with Jokic because he's unbelievable. And everybody, first of all, and second of all, in order to beat Denver, you have to stop him. He's the guy you have to stop because they don't have Jamal Murray anymore right now because he's injured. So teams are trying to punk Jokic a little bit. And I think that foul on Morris is not just about Morris. I think there's a bigger thing there going on where Jokic is like, I'm not taking any more of this crap. And based on
the European guy, and there's a whole, Europeans are soft. And I think he's trying to go, no, I ain't soft. He's trying to let people know.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And I thought, and I heard Stephen A. Smith on First Take, and he made a really good point. He's like, listen, these guys from these European countries, and he started naming European countries, which is funny to listen to Stephen A. Smith go, Slovenia, Romania. That was pretty funny. So he's like, these boys don't play. So he was basically making the point, like the countries they come from, there's all kinds of upheaval and stuff.
Not, it's not like they're not country clubs. They're,
Right. And it's like, a lot of these black players who think they're street tough and have street cred, whatever. And like Jokic is like, they drop bombs where I live. Like, it's like, so I really am interested.
Country. We had actual oppression going on in our country,
Right. Yeah. And so I'm really interested to see, because Marcus Morris, Markeith's brother, was talking junk to Jokic and Jokic's brothers, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll be here," and it's like, so I am really interested to see what happens when Denver, because who is Marcus Morris play for now? I don't remember.
God, so
did he play for Washington? I don't remember.
Keith is on the Heat,
right?
Mark Morris is on the Heat. Okay,
I don't know what team he plays for, but anyway, so we'll see. The Heat have to play Denver again, down here in Miami. So we'll
Okay.
see. So we'll see how that goes because I don't think Jokic is taking the crap anymore. I think he's like, you know what, enough. I don't think he'll retaliate like that, but I don't think you're gonna get. I don't think this whole we're gonna be tough and we're gonna stick it to Jokic. What are you gonna? Here's the thing. Like it's almost like Shaq. Like what are you gonna do? He's 7 feet 280. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like you push Jokic around all you want. It doesn't make any difference. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of yes, I'm a Heat fan, but I'm kind of on Team Jokic on this. You know,
Yeah.
let's stop taking shots at the guy. Enough.
Yeah. No. Come
The
on.
other one was Rudy Gobert and Miles Turner for the Pacers got into a battle the other night. They were
Yeah.
fighting for a rebound, and Gobert fell down, and he grabbed Turner to pull him down with him, and then they kind of it was the worst, the worst excuse for a fight. They just kind of grabbed and held each other, and then just kind of moved back.
People don't really get in fights in NBA games anymore. Okay. It's not like the 70s or the 80s. People don't do that anymore. Like they'll get up on each other and they'll say a bunch of crap and there may be some pushing and shoving, but it's not fisticuffs. People aren't going to start throwing haymakers. Okay. It's not.
So anyway, yeah. So I heard, and then JJ Redick was also on First Take. He's working for ESPN. It was his first time on First Take, and he said he was talking about the Jokic thing, and he said, "Listen, we're not into fighting in the NBA." He's like, "But pettiness, we love pettiness." He's like, and he's like, I love it, and I'm here for it. It was fantastic. I was like, that's fantastic. I just love that. Guys holding grudges, like nobody's gonna fight anybody.
Have like recently retired players as analysts, not players who retired 15 years ago, but like players who just recently retired because it's more interesting.
Yeah. So first of all, JJ Redick I think is going to be great on ESPN. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two. I look forward to this stuff. No, but what do you think? Do you think the obviously the rule changes have affected the game, and I think at some point the NBA probably tries to clean this up. But what do you think about the physical play? I'm sure you like it, but what do you think?
I don't know. It's one of those things. It'll kind of work itself out. They'll kind of figure out, who's going to do what. Like James Harden has been scoring more points lately. Like the last couple games, he's looked better. So Nick Wright has been basically writing Harden's obituary lately. Like, he's just not going to be able to adjust, and he's not going to get all these foul calls, so he's not going to be able to score as much.
Right.
All right, we'll see. I think that's one of those things where you got to kind of like, I don't want to jump to conclusions. It's like, I know everybody in the sports media loves to jump. They're like, oh, well, Golden State's the title favorites now. It's like, all right, well, they'll get Klay Thompson back. Their schedule's going to get tougher. Like, slow down. Like them rolling through parts of the regular season makes sense. Why? Because they shoot threes really well. They move the ball really well. They've got a system that's been in place for like 7 years now. So, they've got players who've been coming up through that. So, yeah, they can, that makes sense that they could kind of roll. And also Steph is playing out of his mind right now. So,
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it's great that the Warriors are playing like that. I was a little slow I had a hard time making them, saying, well, they're a contender. But honestly, looking at the Western Conference.
Someone was saying yesterday that the West is really wide open. And I guess I kind of agree because with the Lakers, like, forget about the way that they play. I don't know if they're all going to be healthy.
Right.
It's not some outlandish concern. It's a legit concern, And the thing with Westbrook, what if it doesn't work out? What if they trade him in the middle of the season? That could happen. So, I think the West is somewhat wide open. Like, I don't really trust a lot of these teams, and the Warriors, it's like, yeah, they got Steph and Clay's going to come back and they got Draymond, but Jordan Poole hasn't been through, like, he wasn't on the team when they went to the finals 5 straight years. So he doesn't have this playoff experience. Wiggins doesn't have that kind of playoff experience. So, I did find it kind of funny that like Colin was ripping Andrew Wiggins the other day. He's like, yeah, whenever he plays Minnesota or Cleveland, he's really great, but it's like, he's maddening because it could be much better than he is. And I'm just like, Colin, I don't think you're getting this. Like, on the Warriors, he doesn't have to be the greatest player on the team. He doesn't have to be the second greatest player on the team. Hell, he may not even have to be the third greatest player on the team. He could just be the fourth greatest player. How awesome is that to have somebody as talented as Andrew Wiggins just be the fourth best player on the team? It's like Lamar Odom when he was on the Lakers with Kobe and Pau Gasol. It's like, yeah, he can be really good. You don't want him as the number 2 option, but number 3 or 4, like, oh, that's pretty good. So.
Yeah, I mean, Wiggins just has to play defense, and he's going to get all kinds of open shots on that team. So yeah.
So I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think the Warriors have it's an interesting thing because they know who they are. Like they know how to play, they know how they want to do everything. So I think the continuity helps. I think Utah is also kind of like that, where they basically had the same guys. The Miami Heat, or they've added some guys, but they basically play the same way.
Yeah, well, like the Warriors are going to play Phoenix like 2 games in a row at the end. I think it's like the end of this month. Like the end of this month, they have one game that's like at home, and then the next game is on the road at Phoenix or whatever. So that's kind of an interesting game to watch. And then I think they play Golden State plays Brooklyn, and I think they play Philadelphia at some point. So those are kind of interesting games just because like their schedule so far has been relatively easy. I mean, they started off the season against the Lakers and they won that game, and then they played, I forget who they lost to. They lost to like Memphis, like in overtime or something. But the rest of the games, like they played Charlotte and they played New Orleans, and so they've had some relatively easy games. But they did just beat the Bulls, and the Bulls were like 8-3. So
Yeah. So So I'm really excited. NBA should be heating up. We got Christmas Day games in about 6 weeks or so, and so I'm interested to see how it goes as football starts to heat up a little bit here. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was we talked about TV shows that we liked or movies that we saw. So on Netflix, there's this docuseries, called Bad Sports, and I watched I watched 3 of the episodes. Pretty interesting. So it's the first one was about this point shaving scandal in college basketball in 1994 at Arizona State. So they had one of the players who got involved with a gambler. He was trying to get more money, and he got involved with a guy with like some kind of stockbroker, some kind of financial guy, and they were placing a bunch of bets on games. And what I thought was interesting was I'm watching it going, you can't, and the guy's like, well, he wants to bet like the first game the guy's gonna shave points or whatever. This guy wants to bet $500,000. And he's like, all right. So I'm like, all right, so I'll go to Vegas. And I'm watching it going, you can't bet $500,000 on a game. Like,
not in college basketball, no.
Well, no, not in any sport. You can't. No sports book is going to take a $500,000 on anything. Number one.
Yeah.
So you have to do, and first of all, any bet over $10,000, well, the IRS has to be involved at that point.
Yep.
So he's got to go. So he goes around to all of the sports books and has to make different bets in every place, right? So after the second game that they did this, so basically what they did was the point spread was like they were favored to win by 12 or something. And so the guy said, all right, just make it less than 12. Like, you guys can win the game, just make sure it's less than 12. So that's what he did. By the second game, they were already starting to move. The line was starting to move. Like, they were starting to change the line 3 or 4 points or whatever. And by this,
all the bets that were coming in on that number.
Exactly. So by the second thing, the Nevada Gaming Commission's telling the FBI, we got a problem. Something's going on here. And then, so then he bet 500, he got $1 million. He bet $1 million, he got $2 million. So then they get to the fourth game, and he's trying to get $2 million, or no, he had $5 million. And so he can only get like $2 or $3 million out on the game. But the problem is the line moved from 12. It was like they were favored by 12. They were favored by 4. Like, he moved the line 8 points. So it's like, because of that much money. So it's like, it's like, yeah. Now, listen, for an individual game, for a small amount of money, anybody could shave points. And you'd never know. You'd never have a clue. Like, guys could be doing this all over the place. And like, they were giving the player like 20 grand.
Yeah.
Like, so like, yeah, you could do this, but once it involved a lot of money,
you're screwed.
Someone's going to notice, and Las Vegas is going to go, wait a minute, because even if you did it like you didn't place the bets in Vegas, they would still see what's going on. It would still get out that, oh my God, there's all this action. So yeah, the FBI caught on to what they were doing. They caught everybody. They sent the financial guy who was betting all the money like to jail for 3 years, and they sent the player to jail for like a year. I realize I'm spoiling the whole damn thing now, but anyway, I just thought it was interesting that people think oh well, it's actually not that easy to do.
Yeah,
it's not as simple as, oh, you just whatever. Now could somebody get to a player, and could this be happening and we not know it? Sure.
Yeah.
The second one was about this guy. He was a race car driver, and he also sold weed.
Okay.
And so he's importing in the 80s, right? He's importing weed from Colombia or other countries, whatever, and bringing it in on container ships. We're talking like $40-50 million worth at a time. And so, but he's like, well, I just did it because I wanted to race cars. So he bought his own racing team, and he bought his own, he bought the cars, and he actually got really good. He actually raced in a lot of these Grand Prix races, and then he raced in the Indy 500. So yeah, it was pretty fascinating. Like, this guy's basically, throwing his whole life away, for. And at one point, what really struck me was, I forget the guy's name, but he was basically like, listen, I went to jail. He went to jail for like 20 years or something, for all of the charges. He was like, yeah, I went to jail. It was a plant, though. I mean, come on, it was a plant. It's like, okay, yeah, it is a plant, but when you're making $50 million at a time.
You know what that reminds me of? You remember the scene in that movie Blow? He's like, right. Your Honor, I don't feel like what I did was a crime. I mean, I took a plant across an imaginary line. I mean,
right.
You say you're looking for somebody who's always right and never wrong, but it ain't me, babe. It ain't me. What
cracks me up is that you think you're going to make that much money and nobody's going to notice.
Yeah, no. Come
on. First of all, the government's going to want a piece of it at minimum. Yeah. Okay. Second of all, you can't, when it's that much money, you can't. There's no place to put it. There's no answers to any of this. So yeah. It was pretty interesting. It was one of those crime stories, and the guy happened to be a really good race car driver, which was kind of weird. It was just kind of like, wait a minute. So, you know what I mean? And he's like, he didn't really, and what's funny is I didn't get the impression from him he didn't really like the power or the selling the drugs or any of that. He just wanted to race cars.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the third one was about this Italian soccer thing, which was pretty interesting. Like, they were fixing matches and stuff. And so that was pretty interesting. But anyway, yeah, if you listen to this whole thing, I've basically given it all away anyway. But it was worth. It was good. Honestly, it was good. They were well done. Not as good as 30 for 30, but they were good.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Anything else you want to hit? I think we've babbled on enough.
I think we've kind of covered it. I mean, hey, we don't have to watch the Dolphins today because they already played on Thursday. So
that's right. We can watch teams that we can just enjoy and not have a personal stake in.
We can watch teams and be like, "Oh, that team sucks. Sucks to be them."
Yeah.
At least they're not us. No. Anyway, all right. Yeah, no, that's it. That's all I got.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Episode 13. Hopefully, we had some good stuff on here.
Yep.
Take care.